Sports, America's most racist pastime. Surprised? You shouldn't be. As a lifelong sports fan, I was slowly beginning to realize that one of America's most famous parts of culture has long been deeply rooted in hatred and racism. Hi, I'm Jack Frischkorn, and today we're going to discuss sports and its relation to freedom of speech in the United States. Specifically, sports teams' names and logos, which have long been embattled with the United States Constitution. Today, we're going to discuss the history of sports in America, the arguments that can be on both sides of the offensive sports team's nickname and logos argument, what the Constitution says about this issue, and finally, legal precedent that has been set. Let's hope I do better than last time, right? Can't do worse. So the first thing we're going to discuss quickly is racism in sports. As we all know, America was founded on racism, for lack of a better term, and sports are no exception. Minorities have long dealt with scrutiny and hate in the sports world for basically one reason: their skin color. The three players I have seen here, Charles Elliott, Earl Lloyd, and Jackie Robinson, were the three players that broke the color barrier in three major sports in America: football, basketball, and baseball. All dealt with hateful, disparaging, and cruel comments. And I think it was just kind of just important to touch on that before we get into the main topic, just to show you kind of why this argument is so heated and will continue to be like that. So now that's what I call racist. Pretty much as good as I can describe it. So the two offensive team name and logos that we're specifically going to try to touch on here are the Washington Redskins and the Cleveland Indians. So the Washington Redskins are a professional football franchise who play in the National Football League. Their name, the Redskins, is taken from a colonist in the 16th century when they first came over to America. They coined the nickname Redskins for Native Americans, which obviously is a very disparaging nickname. And then on the right here, we have Chief Wahoo, who is the primary logo of the Cleveland Indians, a professional baseball team who plays in Major League Baseball. Chief Wahoo is what a stereotypical Native American would look like, according to the artist, I guess. So these are two of the more offensive logos that still stand today. So the second body point we're going to discuss is the arguments that are made on both sides of the nickname, of the offensive nickname and logos that are given throughout sports. So the first one is that you can't judge sports logos on contemporary standards when a lot of these logos were made back in the early 20th century. So the Redskins were founded in 1923 and the Cleveland Indians 1903. So both of these logos were made at this point almost 100 years ago. So some say it's not fair to judge it based on that, which, okay, I don't agree with that, but it's one of the arguments. So the second argument we have is how it impacts minorities, which honestly is impossible for me or anybody of my skin color to say, because how do we know? So many Native American groups have drawn issues about it, said they don't like it, and that they think it's offensive. Personally, I agree, but that's a second argument. So then the third argument and most important argument, which is the one that we're going to kind of touch on here, is free speech. So as we show down here, heartbreaking, the worst person you just made a great point. That person right there is Dan Snyder, owner of the Redskins. His longstanding argument is that free speech, the use of logos and trademarks and all that, is free speech in the United States, so he can do what he wants, which is true. Doesn't mean it's not offensive, but free speech, as we know, plays a huge role in this. However, there are ways to get around this, and as we have seen. So the NCAA, which is the governing body of college athletics, has banned 18 teams such as the Florida State Seminoles, the San Diego State Aztecs, and the Utah Utes, all who have Native American or other minority logos or team names, from competing in postseason NCAA events until they were to change their names or logos back in 2005. Most of the teams did comply. Others got proof from Native Americans or other minority groups that said that their name didn't offend them and that they were allowed to use it. But this is kind of just one of the examples where free speech doesn't always work. So as we transition to our third and final point, so this is where the legal precedent takes in. So the Redskins were originally banned from using the trademark back a couple years ago in 2013, where the government said that they were not allowed to use the trademark because it was considered disparaging or offensive. So as we have here, the Lanham Act was originally judged by two parts. Is the mark disparaging in context? And would the phrase be considered offensive to a large group of people? The people who judged this originally considered the Redskins name to fit both of those criteria, but as we'll see next, it didn't stand. So the biggest part of this entire discussion is the case of the Slants. So the Slants are an Asian American rock band group, as you can see right here. Wow, really entertaining, guys. that were originally named as slants, obviously a slur for Asian Americans. So when they brought their trademark up to the office denied them for the same reason that they denied the Redskins with the Lanham Act. They felt that this was unconstitutional and went to the United States Supreme Court. And as you can see here, they got an 8-0 victory. So the Supreme Court ruled the Lanham Act unconstitutional, and they redefined what the disparaging clause should mean, because they felt that the office had too much rule and say over what was disparaging, what was not, because they didn't always use the same criteria. And a lot of times it was on a case-to-case basis. So this not only gave the slants the right to use their name in America, but it also freed the Redskins to use their name, because you can't necessarily say what's disparaging to a group of people, because one set of people might find something disparaging that other people don't. So this is kind of where the free speech clause comes in, because they were allowed to do that. So as we have here, high faults, last transition. So I will finally shut up, but just to wrap it up, what we discussed today was the history of racism in sports in America, which unfortunately is still prevalent today. Trademark law in the United States and how it relates to teams like the Redskins and the Cleveland Indians. What can be done to circumventilate free speech in the United States, as we saw from the NCAA. And finally, the slant case, which has kind of made new law in the United States. So what does this mean, right? What does it mean, right, folks? So I think, honestly, it kind of just, it kind of just shows you the power of free speech in the United States, even to this day, and how much kind of reign it has. You would have never thought that, sports teams and what relation does the name Redskins or the Chief Wahoo have to free speech in the United States. But I kind of think it just shows the amount of power that free speech has that we don't really know about. So my challenge to all you guys, because none of you guys are doing anything over quarantine. I'm not. I'm watching Netflix. So I kind of challenge you guys to take a deeper look into the history of your favorite hobbies and see what they're really about. Because before I did this, I didn't really know the deep-rooted, for lack of a better word, racism in sports and how free speech relates to sports. I thought that was fascinating and didn't really know that. I think you guys might be surprised if you take a look at your favorite hobbies, where they really came from in the history of it. But knowing you guys probably won't do that and watch Netflix anyway, because that's what I would do. Wish you guys the best and hope to see you guys next year.